Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we plant some perennial mums. So let's go. Late summer is the best time to start looking for mums, especially perennial mums. A lot of people buy their mums each year thinking that they're annuals. In fact, many perennials can be overwintered to come back year after year. Now, it's not a 100% foolproof method of overwintering mums, but I've been pretty successful in getting my mums to come back year after year. But there are a couple of tips that I want to share with you if you want to get your mums to return for you. Tip number one is to select the right kind of mum. It might use words like hardy mum or garden mum. In fact, it might even say hardy down to zone 5, and that would tell you if it's hardy in your growing zone. In fact, last year when I went to Walmart, I saw that there were mums there that said annual, but then it said hardy down to zone 5. I planted them in my yard and they came back for me. Tip number 2 is getting those mums planted in your landscape at the right time. You want to get those mums planted as soon as possible, starting as early spring if you can find them, if not early spring, sometime during the summer, and if not during the summer, the earliest part of fall. And this is especially true if you live in a cold area like I do. And the reason is you want those roots to establish themselves as quick as possible. Mums take a long time for their roots to establish, and by getting those roots to establish as early on as possible ensures that the mums will overwinter for you. Tip number 3 is to keep those mums well watered once you get them planted. You don't want to go through all this effort just for those mums not to survive. So once we get these mums planted in the landscape, I'm going to make sure they're getting ample water every day. Tip number 4 is to give them a little fertilizer. I'm going to be using Espoma Biotone fertilizer, and that fertilizer specifically makes sure that those roots establish themselves even quicker. We might as well help the plants out so that they establish themselves well before the ground freezes, well before we get our first frost. And then tip number 5 is to make sure you're planting them in the right location. Mums like a lot of sun, so make sure you're planting them either in a full sun or a part sun location. 2 big things I want to share with you. If you do buy your mums and you want to display them on your porch, let's say, and you wait too long to get those mums put in the ground, you can try overwintering them in your garage. I've been very successful with doing that, and I have a lot of videos showing you how I overwinter lots of plants, including mums, in my garage. I'll put a link to them down in the description below. And the other thing I do want to share with you has to do with pruning. You want to make sure you're pruning your mums a couple of times during the season so that they don't get too tall and leggy. And this is true if you've been able to successfully overwinter your mums and now you want to treat them as a perennial. I have videos showing you my process for pruning the mums. I'll link those down below as well. We're going to be planting the mums up along the front walkway, and this is the west-facing side of my house. This area is considered part sun, so I think the mums will get enough sun to do well in this spot. Even though this says proven winners, this is not a proven winners plant. In fact, I got this plant for free from a friend of mine. It was the end of the season and he didn't want his mums anymore. He said, come get them if I want them. And you know me, of course I want a free plant. So I went and got the mum, I put it in this pot, and I overwintered it in my unheated garage. My garage doesn't freeze. It stays about 38 degrees Fahrenheit during the coldest part of the winter. And even though I didn't put any additional lighting on this plant in terms of grow lights, the plant was dormant in my garage. I gave it the smallest drink of water about once a month, and that's all I did during the winter months. And then as soon as the danger of frost had passed, I started to harden off my plant. In other words, I started to bring it out slowly each day, and really that's all I did. But I don't want to overwinter these mums one more year in my garage. I want to get them in the landscape. I want to get them established. I also don't want to divide this plant today. And the reason is I don't want to disturb the roots. I want to just take the plant and put it in the ground. The best time to divide your perennial mums is usually in the springtime. Again, so that those roots can really establish themselves. So all we're going to do is take the plant out of the pot. And I did have a tag with it. It's Danielle Purple, and it says Garden Mum, which again tells me that this is a perennial in my zone. It likes full sun and it grows between 10 to 20 inches in height. Mums prefer fertile, well-drained soil, and you want to keep them evenly moist. I will have drip irrigation going to the mums, so they will be very happy. The plant is definitely root bound or pot bound. So just to help it out, I'm very lightly going to do this to the bottom of the roots. I want to help my plant out so that the roots don't just keep circling around. I also don't want to disturb the roots too much because, again, I want my plant to overwinter. You may live in an area that's much warmer than where I live, so the rules might be a little bit different. You might be able to get your mums planted in your landscape a little bit later. But generally up here in the Northeast, we would want to plant our mums as early as possible. Another thing I'm going to do right now is I'm noticing there are some pieces that are dead or don't look very good. I might as well just give this a light trim job. And I'm just using hand pruners to do the job. And now that we've cleaned it up, let's go ahead and prepare the planting hole. I just have some nice mulch here, so I want to pull back the mulch. I also have drip irrigation in here, so I want to make sure before I start digging, I find where the irrigation line is. And it's way back here, so we're safe. We can go ahead and plant our mum right in this area. I'm going to use a large shovel to dig the hole. And the soil should be perfect because this is a very well-draining soil. It's been amended with compost. And as I dig down a little bit more, it gets a little bit sandy, a little bit gravelly, which is actually perfect for the lavender that we planted here recently. We're going to check the depth, and I can see that it's still a little too high. So I'm going to dig it a little bit deeper. You want to plant the mums as deep as they were in the potter container that they were in. However, if you were transplanting your mums from somewhere else in your landscape and you want to know how deep to plant them, you want to make sure that the green foliage on the top as well as the crown of the base are above soil level and that the roots are beneath soil level. You don't want to plant them too deep, but you also don't want to plant them too high up because then you're exposing them to the cold elements. Okay, I dug it a little bit deeper and that looks perfect. So the next step is to add some of that biotone starter fertilizer. I had bought a nice big bag of this off of Amazon, but your local garden center probably sells it as well. And again, it has what it needs in terms of getting those roots to really establish themselves quicker. I don't do it with a lot of perennials in my yard, but especially certain perennials that take a long time for their roots to establish, I love to use the biotone starter. The soil is wet because the irrigation ran last night, but if you were planting your mums in soil that's dry, you would want to go ahead and put some water in the planting hole. We're going to go ahead, place our mum in the hole, and then backfill. Now that the mum has been planted and we've put the soil around it, made sure that we firmed it in, we can go ahead and place the mulch back around the plant. And I think that's another great tip. Even if you don't have mulch in the flower bed where you're planting your mums, that first season that you get your mums planted, it's always a good idea to add some sort of a mulch at the base of your plant, just to ensure that it overwinters for you. You don't have to use bark mulch like I'm using. You could use something like leaves, you could use some sort of tree material that you've cut from your yard, but you want to make sure that you're insulating that plant a little bit, just to give it the best chance of survival that first winter. So I'm going to go ahead and replace the mulch. And I'm just going to give my mums a nice drink of water. Now that I have that mum planted, I have this one to plant plus many others around my yard. So let me know in the comments below if you have perennial mums in your garden. And if so, what are some tips or tricks that you want to share with other people that might be watching this video? Do you have any varieties that you really love? Please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.